Today on the GrandLAN Video Blog, Eureka, Heresy, Hotwire, Requiem for the Dead, and Scott Pilgrim. Hey everyone, welcome to the GrandLAN Video Blog for books that came out on February 4th, 2009. As always, I'm Craig, your host. This is part 3 of 4 reviews. Normally about this time, we've finished talking about the Marvel Comics and we get to the DC stuff. However, very excited about some indie stuff, particularly a very shiny pocket-sized digest. We're going to talk about that first because I am very excited to talk about that and get all of you on board if you're not already. But first, we got to wade through some other indie stuff. Let's start with Eureka #1 from Boom Studios. Wow, this book is something else. Not going to say bad necessarily, but it's definitely unique in the industry today. It's a book that starts assuming you know certain things, and from that I felt like it was a TV adaptation or something, and apparently I guess it's not. I don't know. I felt lost from the get-go. It has that frantic, bizarre pacing that made the Odd Squad very funny for us to review, but it doesn't have really terrible decisions necessarily. It just has some really head-scratching moments. In fact, you'll probably scratch your head a lot while you're reading this. It may cause hair loss, you're scratching so much. But presumably there's a payoff, and the art is not bad, and the writing is interesting, which is better than I can say for most of what the Boom Studios have been putting out right now. No offense to Mark Waid, but there's a lot of D-grade talent working for him at Boom Studios, putting all of this stuff out. This is probably, it's unique and it's going to be overlooked. I know it's going to be overlooked. It's tough to review this book, and I hope I've articulated the way I feel about it. Moving on to Ape Entertainment, they give us Heresy #3. Been talking about this for a while. The book has been a little slow, but the quality is still there, and we're starting to actually get an explanation of this war that involves vampires. Very interesting stuff. It's still paying off. Unfortunately, being an independent company, Ape Entertainment's production value still leaves something to be desired. This entire issue is shot just off. So everything is ghosted, and it just doesn't look right. And unfortunately, it's a production flaw that's going to hurt the enjoyment of this book. For, you know, if they're all this way, I don't know. If it's only certain ones got out that way. But it's still a very interesting vampire story. And I'm not a big vampire story reader, but I'm still fascinated to see where this is going to go. We get some very much well-deserved character development pages in the back as well, which kind of help make this much more palatable. Definitely setting up for, you know, bonus materials for the eventual trade paperback, as every comic has. But still a surprisingly good book from a company that most people have probably never heard of. So if you're into vampires, check it out. Our good friends at Radical Comics are launching Hotwire this week. Steve Pugh and Warren Ellis. Look at that, a Warren Ellis name. This is the biggest A-list creator you can possibly put on a Radical Comics book right now. Unfortunately, Warren Ellis is not actually working on it, and this is just Steve Pugh running with the idea that he and Warren Ellis created. On the good side, this actually has quality art that isn't painted or computer rendered or anything like that. I know that Radical books have looked really nice, but sometimes they look too nice. Sometimes it's just too muddied by, like, you know, another good example would be something like The Astonishing X-Men, where you have art that's just so bogged down with the same colors or the same, you know, and it's tough to figure out sequentially what's happening in the story. The visual storytelling isn't there. It's a beautiful picture to look at, but once you try to actually figure out what the characters are doing, it's tough. In Hotwire's case, you keep the high quality that Radical has established, but you get actual line work and actual motion. Very strong color use to contrast. The color use here does not all blend together. It doesn't all muddy together. It's very clear what's happening visually, and the story is very, very interesting as well. This, again, only $2.99 to get out on the ground floor. of another of Radical's great miniseries that they continue to put out. It's kind of cyberpunky. It's very interesting. If you followed the previous Warren Ellis Steve Pugh project, then I bet you'll be right on board. But for those of you who are kind of leery, it's a great, solid idea, and it does have Warren Ellis's name on it. Definitely worth it. Check it out. Lastly, we get to Scott Pilgrim, Volume 5. Good friend of mine, as you may know from the old video blogs, Brad Blankenship, gave me Scott Pilgrim 1 through 4. Gosh, this is shiny. Gave me Scott Pilgrim 1 through 4 late last year and said, sit down and read it and you're going to love it. And I said, I don't know. It just doesn't look like my style. It's black and white. Everything's kind of manga-ized. It'll be tough to get into. And finally, reluctantly, on one bored night, I picked up Scott Pilgrim Volume 1 and I read it, and I wasn't done. I couldn't be done. I needed Volume 2, so I read Volume 2, and again, I needed to see where it went next, so I picked up Volume 3 and got through that, and then I went to Volume 4 and I finished that, and I was left with this tragic cliffhanger in my mind, because I'm going, I need Volume 5. When can I order Volume 5? Oh, I can't. It was damaging to my psyche to have to wait this long for Volume 5, and I've come to terms with it. And Volume 5, shiny cover and all, God, that's distracting. It's just driving me crazy. Volume 5, shiny cover and all, well worth the wait. This is the Empire Strikes Back of the Scott Pilgrim universe. If you're not reading, let me sum it up real quick. Scott Pilgrim is a 23-year-old kid. He turns 24 in this issue. He was dating this girl named Knives. Now he's dating this girl named Ramona, who he saw in his dreams. However, before he's allowed to actually date Ramona, he must defeat her 7 evil ex-boyfriends. That's the whole process. He's taken out the first 4. He gets the twins in this one, and then the mysterious showdown with Gideon comes in Volume 6, to be released next year, hopefully. Brian O'Malley, I'm looking at you. Give us a release date. Give us something. In the meantime, we're going to get a movie starring Michael Cera, or as I like to call him, Keanu Reeves of Generation Y. It could be good. It could be really good. Edgar Wright's working on it. Some quality, top-notch talents on the movie. Hopefully it's not going to ruin Volume 6 for us. Just be another iteration of the story. Or it's comics. If it pays off, adapt the first 2. Give us a happy ending. Then, if it does well, adapt 3 and 4 and adapt 5 and 6. Turn it into a trilogy. This is a great idea. It's comics, it's Hollywood, of course they're going to do it. This is the book that it should be done in, because we should get the finish in print form before we get the movie summarizing what's going to happen in Volume 6. Anyways, all of that aside, Volume 5 is The Empire Strikes Back. You see these characters really develop these new directions, and you see some dark sides to these people, and you see an ultimate ending where we begin to ask, what's going to happen? Scott is so close to his goal of taking down the 7 evil ex-boyfriends. What's going to happen when he gets there? And that's a harrowing question to ask. It's fascinating exactly what's going on here. This is a great book. It says comedy, action, romance on the back. It says 13+. I cannot possibly argue with any of that. There's comedy here, there's action here, there's romance here, there's funny video game puns, there's punk rock bands, and 13+, really, if you are between the ages of 13 and 99, you should be reading this book. Someone should be telling you about this. This is the indie book, okay? Bless Bone, it was a great story, and Jeff Smith's a wonderful creator, but this is the current indie book du jour. If you're not reading this, you're missing out on intense characterization, fascinating stuff, and you will never think that you could possibly care for such a soap opera-y story, but it's so good. Read it, please. Read the first 4. I know Diamond has a really good policy on, order with confidence. All of the back orders will be filled by Oni Press. Read it from the start, and I defy you to tell me that you don't get it or that you don't like it. I cannot think of a single person on this planet who would not enjoy this story. It's that good. Did I get my point across? I feel like I was a little preachy there. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next installment.